So I changed the title of our session from increasing your impact to increasing our impact, because I really feel that the word our is just a little bit more inclusive as Melanie talked to us. All righty. Okay, so again, our session plan is a welcome. My name is Beth Growney Selene. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Madison, West Towne, Middleton. And I would like to go from my screen anyway, I can see Erin, if you wouldn't mind going next, Erin.
Sorry, what did you want me to do?
Name and club.
Oh, I'm Erin Lucan. I'm from the Rotary Club of Madison After Hours.
Thank you. Marissa.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marissa Dickinson, and I am from the La Crosse Rotary After Hours Club.
Thank you. Alan. Unmute. Edwin.
Edwin Boss.
Thank you and welcome. Who am I seeing? Meg.
Meg V. Stoughton Rotary.
Welcome. Dwight.
Thank you.
Dwight Haney, Fort Atkinson.
Sarah.
I'm Sarah Stackhouse from Eau Claire Morning Rotary.
Welcome. And last but not least, according to my list, Karen.
Chippewa Valley After Hours. Karen Hebert.
Thank you. Thank you all and welcome. Our learning objectives is the next thing we will go through. We've got some key messages, and as I said, this is going to be a discussion. We're going to be talking about assessing our service club or service projects and programs, as well as measuring our impact and communication. But above all, I want us to have fun. So please, everybody, have an open mind and be ready to share whatever you would like. All right. Clearly, I'm not very good at this. Our learning objectives. So this is totally Rotary speak. At the end of this session, you should be able to assess our current and future service projects and programs to ensure that they meet your community's needs, and develop strategies for collecting and measuring our data. Earlier today, I hope you all got 3 documents from Heather. The first one is a worksheet assessing and measuring your projects. The second is Global Grant Monitoring and Evaluation Plan Supplement. And the third was Community Assessment Tools. I sent those to you only so you wouldn't necessarily, especially the last 2, so that you wouldn't necessarily have to try to find them on the Rotary website. These are tremendously valuable tools, especially for global grant applications. But I would also say that they're excellent resources when you're looking at doing programs and projects in your own communities. And above and beyond that, feel free to go to Rotary.org and just start exploring the website to find resources that can be of assistance to you when you are working on program and project development. So because we have a limited amount of time tonight, and I really want us to be able to talk as much as we can, the first part of our session is assessing our service project. And that is, again, that's part of the worksheet that I sent you. So I just want you to, for a moment, to think about what community issue is the project that you've got in mind trying to address. Now, as a point of information, about 2.5 years ago, the trustees of the Rotary Foundation established a requirement that every global grant must have a community assessment attached to their application. I have long felt that every project that we develop in our clubs, locally or globally, should look at the community and determine, in fact, that we are meeting the needs of our community. Brief example, we put together a group of Rotarians that are willing to be tutors at the 7th grade level. We go to the school and say, hey, we've got this group of people that are willing to be tutors for your kids. And the school district says, well, that's wonderful, but what we really need are mentors. It could be a whole different group of people that would be willing to volunteer to be mentors and to fill the needs of what the school needs. So before we get our members all excited about doing something, it just seems to me to make sense that we talk to our recipients and our beneficiaries to make sure that we're addressing their needs. So please feel free to unmute yourselves and participate. Let me know if you want to talk. And the first question would be, did you conduct a community assessment before starting the project that you've got in your mind? Don't everyone speak at one time.
I didn't know if you wanted us to share. We did. The thing that I'm thinking about, what we did is solicited proposal. It's a little bit different than having an assessment, but we solicited proposals along a particular line, and so the community could speak to us, and I think it ended up achieving that in a kind of a roundabout way.
Well, I really like that idea, Karen, and it seems to me that that is an assessment of sorts. I mean, you might not call it an assessment. I might not call it an assessment, but the community is certainly reaching out to you, wouldn't you say, and saying, this is what our needs are.
100%. Yeah.
I love it.
But, yeah, the reason why, the only reason why I'm not giving it full credit is because I'm so eager for all of us to get better at assessing, even for club service. And honestly, the way that it got kicked off with diversity and inclusion, exercising our minds around non-judgmental assessments, non-biased assessments is going to be very healthy for us.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Others? You know what, I think I'm going to ask you to just speak up because for some reason I can't see everybody that's on our group here. So please feel free.
Hi, Mary Beth. This is Marissa, La Crosse Rotary After Hours. We did a Shark Tank meeting last spring, and before that, we actually used a community needs assessment that was already done, the La Crosse County Compass report. It's done through the United Way and the Great Rivers region. So we used an existing resource that was available and shared that with our members and said, go out and find projects that align with these community needs. So we didn't actually do the community needs assessment. We used a resource that was already done by experts in the community.
Is there anything wrong with that, everybody? I mean, I love it. One of the words that Bill has been using a lot, our district governor has been using a lot this year, and it's one of my favorite words since March, the middle of March, is pivoting. And when we've got resources and assessments that have been created and meet the needs of what our members are interested in, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I love that idea. I love that idea. And it really ties in a lot, or kind of partners with what Karen was saying.
Mary Beth, that's also very applicable with global granting too, that there are lots of organizations that are assessing all around the globe. And if the assessment is high quality, and there are a lot of those, then it makes perfect sense for us to pay attention to those things.
Absolutely. And does Rotary accept those?
I think so, although that sounds like a quiz question.
Do you think they do?
I do.
I think they do. Alan, I've got Alan muted in the kitchen. He says, I think they do, and you can even get money for that. How can you make sure that your project is meeting the community's needs in the future? This speaks a little bit to sustainability, I would say. Karen?
There are probably lots of answers, but one thing that pops into my mind is to get somebody from the community on your team.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So this is Erin from the Madison After Hours. And one project that my club is starting to work on right now is expanding the youth exchange program to members of the community that aren't usually a part of youth exchange, such as Latinos, Latinas, African American kids, Native American kids, possibly Hmong kids in the future. So as we're starting this project, we are looking for community partners in each of those communities. So for example, we've reached out to like 100 Black Men of Madison, Centro Hispano, another Native American group in Madison. So looking for community partners to, again, like help us reach the people in their community, and also let us know, I mean, is this something that they would be interested in? Because maybe it's not. But I think having those community partners and having them invested in it with us can help make a successful project.
Well, and that sounds like it's more than a one-year process too, Erin. You're not just doing outreach for next year or the year after. This becomes a sustainable effort on the part of your club and partners.
Right, that's definitely the long-term vision for it.
Excellent. And then the students that do participate become your excellent role models and spokespeople moving forward.
And our future Rotarians.
Rotarians, great. Other comments on that? How can we make sure the project meets the community's needs in the future? You know, one of the things, I was taking notes, I thought Melanie's presentation was excellent. But she said one of the things is that we need to listen, think, and hear others' experiences. And I think that's a really good process too in making sure that we're meeting our community's needs today and in the future, is really listening to what's going on. Who, and you can even be thinking about things hypothetically here too. You don't necessarily need to be thinking about a specific, oh my gosh, I'm going the wrong way here. Sorry, you guys. I think I inadvertently have been pushing my forward button. If you can think of a hypothetical project, who would or did you involve in an assessment? Let's say you want to do backpacks for kids coming back to school. Who would you involve in the assessment in terms of who, what, where, why, and how? Who would you first reach out to?
I'd reach out to the schools, Mary Beth.
Schools seem to make sense if you're doing backpack for kids. Thanks, Edwin.
County caseworkers that know the families. Assuming
Caseworker?
you're talking about backpacks for needy children, for children that can't afford them.
Well, that might be part of your project. Yeah.
you might reach out to a group like Big Brothers Big Sisters, because they have contacts with a lot of kids. Also in Madison, we have the Goodman Center, which is a community center that does a lot with kids. So I don't know if La Crosse or other places in our district have those sorts of centers, but that might be a place to reach out to also.
Yeah, a place that comes to my mind is any after-school program that really works with a significant number of school-aged kids. Yeah, great. How would we reach out to them?
We actually did a backpack project this year, and I probably didn't take the right route of doing it. But it was originated from the Valley View Club, and we thought, well, let's increase the impact and get after hours involved. They already had an existing relationship with the Northside Elementary School, so their backpacks were going there. And for us, we have a relationship with the Good Fight Community Center, so that would be something similar here in La Crosse. So we started with them and said, how many do you guys need? So those first 25 backpacks went to them. And then through conversation, my cousin's a teacher. She got me in touch with the social worker or the media person for the school district that was working on this type of project. And in the end, Catholic Charities and Salvation Army were doing a joint effort. So our backpacks went to them because they had the needs or the resources to distribute it to those kids that needed them most in the community.
So really great collaboration and partnerships. Fabulous.
So that's an example of you're trusting the sort of the overarching organization to have done an assessment to know what they're doing, and that's perfectly fine too. I think that assessment is important when you're designing a new program.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How
do you? Oh, Alan, go ahead.
If it's not a new program, but it's something that maybe has been being done in some other community, there's absolutely nothing wrong to talking to them and getting the particulars of how they're running the program. And if they've been doing it for a few years, you can save a lot of time and a lot of headaches by figuring out what's right and what's wrong in putting that program forth in your own community.
Yeah, there's no need to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to.
That's a really good tip for sustainability too. Look around and see what lasts and take a tip.
Right, great suggestion. Are we making sure that we are establishing goals for the project or program? Are we always conscious of that?
I am.
Do you think in general we do a good job of that, or do we just say, this sounds like a good project, let's do it without?
I think in general we still have wishful thinking, and that's not a Rotary thing, that's a human thing.
Mm-hmm. Is the project that you established a good way to, or that you're proposing to go forward with, a good way to engage your members? And are part of your goals including what percentage of your members will be asked or expected to participate?
I have a little something on that. So the project for which we solicited proposals, not in as cool a way as Shark Tank, but still it was a very fun, engaging process. We meant to take a step of assessing club resources, time, money, interest, and we forgot, and that came back to bite us. It's funny how we just forgot. I think honestly we got enthusiastic about the project, And that enthusiasm made us forget to take that step, even though we had articulated it. It was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Others on that?
No.
I think it's absolutely necessary, but I think when push comes to shove, sometimes in some of the smaller clubs that you end up doing projects despite the fact that there's maybe not enough people that are going to be engaged by it. You wish there were more, but there's simply not enough interest.
You know, if we're lacking in member interest, do we look at some of our project and program development as an opportunity for membership development?
Mm-hmm.
Or could we? I mean, Edwin, I think you're absolutely right. I think we have the best of intentions, and I think sometimes it kind of falls flat, or we pick a date that's not convenient for everybody. But some of our program participants could likely be really good Rotarians.
It's an opportunity to partner, which is healthy for us. And I think that we truly can recruit new members into roles. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not what we typically do at all, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. People like the idea that you've thought of them to do good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great point, Karen. And I think in our club, we have a bunch of new members and lots of enthusiasm for projects. And so for us, asking those new members to maybe take on a co-chair position on, a project, like really gets them involved right away and, gives them ownership instead of just, signing up for a 4-hour shift doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, is it not provide value to their membership? If they feel valued, it connects them. No. Super. All right, to stay on track, we're going to move on to part 2. So you can think of a new project. You can continue in your mind's eye, excuse me, with the same project. But now we're going to talk about measuring the impact of that project or program. And again, this is part of the worksheet that was sent to you today. What community issue is your project trying to address? Perhaps thinking about why is that an issue? And then what kind of data from your project will be useful to collect? And even before that, think about what your baseline data is going to be. It's kind of hard to know how we measure success if we don't know where we started. So it's in terms of, let's go back to Erin's proposed project or program, because it really is a program of increasing the ability of some of our underserved communities to participate in youth exchange. Well, if the number is 0 right now, it's a pretty easy baseline to work from. But if our program is helping children get immunized that are not necessarily having the opportunity or the capacity to get immunized, we've got a bigger number than 0 working from that. So think in terms of what is your baseline data? And then as that project progresses and succeeds, or perhaps fails, what kind of data are we looking to collect that we believe would be useful moving forward? Think of it in terms of local projects and an informal process, because again, when we're talking about global grants, it's a much more formalized process for measurement and evaluation.
Mary Beth, this is Dwight. I think some of that, how you get to that detail starts when you're setting your goal. How do you define what you're trying to achieve? If you want to give books to kids, well, it's pretty hard to come up with some specific data other than we gave X amount of books to X amount of kids. But if your goal is to have some impact by doing that, then you start to talk about what that impact is, and then you can start to find measurements about that specific impact versus just the books and kids. So as you're writing goals for the project, I think you got to think about them. You know, it's begin with the end in mind sort of thing. What's the story you want to tell at the end of this? And then you design everything to get to that story. That's basically what a goal is.
Well, it really is. Are we doing a good, thank you, Dwight. Are we doing a good job of that, do you think?
It's pretty sophisticated. I love that, Dwight, how articulate you are on that. It's pretty sophisticated for a Rotary Club. And I do think that in the project that I had in mind earlier was we built a tiny house. So completing the tiny house is actually an action. Ending homelessness is the goal, or making a dent in it. But we're not sophisticated enough to measure that. So we're grateful that other organizations into which our actions roll up will be measuring that. But some clubs might be sophisticated enough on some of these things.
But didn't you accomplish that goal for the family that you built the house for?
Well, yeah, it's, you know, people move in and out, undeniably, for sure. I'm just saying that these whys end up taking different shapes, and getting the job done, like buying and packing 150 backpacks or whatever the number is, yes. But making sure kids are ready to learn when they enter school, that's the bigger thing. That's hard for a Rotary Club to measure.
Mm-hmm. But do you think, and kind of going back to some of the things that Melanie addressed, if we start to think a little bit more big picture, do we become more relevant? Do we become more attractive? Do we become the value location for business people, community members that really want to make an impact?
I hate it when people talk in terms of it's hard to do, and then like the idea is, and therefore we don't do it. That is not my point. Absolutely. The more we exercise this skill, the better it will be. But it might mean that we attach ourselves to larger organizations who do articulate these things, and we say we're joining them to do this thing, and we understand that what we've done helped X amount, whatever, of that measurable outcome.
No, well said. Dwight, Edwin, you look like you have something to say.
I was going to ask you, Mary Beth, what do you mean by big picture? When you just said if we think more big picture, you mean larger projects?
Well, I think sometimes it can be larger projects. I think sometimes it can be a bigger goal. And going back to Dwight's comments about really establishing what that goal is, it may become a longer term goal, not a start in September and end in October kind of proposition. But I think we have the opportunity to think bigger, even in our local community, to have a really much greater impact.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we've been discussing that a little bit we've got this new international service committee that just started up in the district. The opportunities to do global grants in our district and scale up the size of the projects that we're doing, because I think that's absolutely right. You're going to really influence business people in the community much more if they see us doing something large and not necessarily piggybacking. And I'm not saying all of us do that, but I think Dwight can attest to that. Happens in Fort quite a bit, that we piggyback on some other organizations in order to do a project, and Rotary kind of is the second or the third player in the project that's achieved. So I'd love to see some reverse global grants, because I think we have enough contacts out in the world, this district does, in order to get some international partners that'll send money our way.
I agree. I agree. And all we have to prove is value.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I wanted to go back. Karen, you hadn't told me the story about the little houses yet, so that's an intriguing one to me. But I'm going to even guess the why's already there, though. It wasn't all of a sudden somebody just thought it's a good construction project to build a tiny house. There was something being talked about in the community that there was a need, and tiny houses were seen as part of a solution. And it might not have been for your club to define all that, but it was out there, and if you adopt that why, it's not a heavy lift to have that there. The why is maybe it's something about homelessness, maybe it's something ecological, whatever was the driving force that conversation happened in the community, because I highly doubt you built a tiny house, parked it on a corner somewhere and walked away and said, we hope somebody uses it. There's probably a little more to that process than just building the tiny house. So I think the why's cooked in there. And, as in our clubs, we just, hopefully there's 2 or 3 people that are always asking the question, why are we doing this? Not to say it's a bad thing, but to just get out there for all our members. Here's the importance of doing this, so everybody understands why the club's doing something. That kind of
what you were describing was exactly my point.
Yeah.
One of the things that you can keep in mind, though, too, that your smaller projects can oftentimes get the bigger projects to come about because you're fulfilling a portion of a need, and the larger project just kind of grows from that, and vice versa. You have larger projects that will propel smaller projects within the community, perhaps, or you'll find when you're doing a water well project that there's something attached to that needs addressing. So it creates a smaller project, but nonetheless important. So it works both ways, I think.
Yeah. Great point. Great point.
You're just saying that.
One of the things that I need to talk about, this is just a personal thing on my part. I have always been jealous of how well the lacrosse Rotary clubs work together. And I'm not just saying this to suck up to Marissa. You are all united in so many programs and projects to benefit the community, that Rotary has such a significant impact, but also the community looks to Rotary and knows that things are going to get done if the need arises. And I would love to emulate that in all of our clusters of communities throughout District 6250. It's admirable, but it's admirable, it's commendable, and it's enviable. So keep doing what you're doing in lacrosse, Marissa.
It is a special place, and I feel fortunate. All the great people I've met through Rotary and all the clubs locally. But, when you talk about increasing the impact, I think, to your point of what you just said, we make an impact individually as clubs. And right now, all of the Cooley Region Rotary clubs, there's been representatives from each of the clubs on a steering committee, and we're actually working on doing a global grant and getting international partners to do a project locally. And cool. I've been fortunate to sit on the group and hear some really amazing projects that got identified, and then they got kind of weeded out based on the areas of focus and whether it was in alignment with, our values and what we do as an organization. And just last week or the week before, we had it down to 2 projects, and the they came and presented. They're both really great projects that will benefit the community. Ultimately, we had to choose one, and it went back to how do we measure the impact of it? And the one that we were going to start working towards is going to touch many more lives and many more age groups and a larger geography. And so it's addressing a real-time need with health disparities and reaching low-income families who don't have health care. So it's exciting. It's fun to collaborate with other clubs, and it's important to have, your own projects internally, but working with others can just open opportunities.
Thanks for sharing that. And you really covered a lot of what this whole session is about in defining that process. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
How can we make sure that we meet our goals? Are we doing evaluations throughout the course of a project? And while you're thinking about that, Edwin, you've got to be pleased to hear Marissa's comments on that, because it sounds like that's exactly what the International Committee is working on right now. So how do we make sure that we meet our goals? Do we have a committee of one, or do we have committees of more than one?
Well, with a global grant, we need 3 signatures from the club, which means there's 3 people willing to say we're going to work to get this done.
At least 3.
Yeah.
We always hope for more, don't we?
Correct. But as Karen said, there's some wishful thinking goes on once in a while.
Yep. What do we do if our project doesn't meet the goals we've established? How do we assess that? Do we always meet our goals?
You might have to decide if the project, is it on an upward trajectory? Does it just need more time? Do you have enough resources to give it, more chances to go forward? Or do you need to just pull the plug if you don't have the time or resources or people or money or whatever it is, if it hasn't gotten to the point that you wanted it to be at?
Great comment. Again, going back to Melanie tonight, COVID has really taught us how to take chances, take risks this year. And sometimes you think you've got a great idea, and for some reason, it just doesn't pan out. And at some point, you need to decide if you're going to fish or cut bait. Thanks, Erin.
I was going to say, for example, our youth exchange thing, we really wanted to have it be a possibility that these kids could go on the short-term exchange in summer of 2021, which would mean it would be scholarships. So we would really need their scholarship applications in by the end of this year, so that we could choose scholarship recipients, make sure they have enough time to get in their applications, I think that are usually due in mid-February. But, and with all this COVID stuff and everything is online, and you're relying on other organizations to get you into their online meetings and have time for you on their agenda when they're busy with a million other things too. And everybody is adjusting to everything else in their lives, not just part of their organizations. I really think that our project is going to be something for summer of 2022, and it's not going to happen right now. So.
But it doesn't mean that the project failed.
No, it's just adapting to the circumstances.
Right. Thank you. We have 4 minutes before we're going to be expected back in the great room. So if we could move on to the last question, and that has to do with our communications. How can we, will we, or have we communicated the impact of our project and its impact on the community? Are we doing a good job of sharing our story? And if not, how do we change that?
I think it's really important to have public image chairs or committees that are prepared to be able to do press releases and social media posts and interviews and all kinds of things. The nice thing about social media is everybody really is the captain of their own destiny on getting a word out. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll flow into official channels, but we can all now tell our own stories. And so getting good at that is really, really important and such an opportunity for us.
When we're creating a committee for the program or project, do we think consciously about making sure we have a public relations or a public image person or a committee within the committee on public relations or public image, so that we've got a group of Rotarians who are focused on sharing the story of the project or program from beginning till past the end? And if not, is that a good idea? You're so quiet.
I think it's important to always have a multidisciplinary approach to all of our projects in Rotary, because growth in community service spurs membership, spurs image, spurs foundation giving. And so if we can always have representatives from around the club on any particular project, no matter what the effort is being led, like if it's foundation leading, make sure you have membership PI. If it's membership leading, make sure you have foundation, even in a, well, maybe probably always in a minor role, but if we think this cross-pollination, I think it really makes everything we do stronger, because all these things are very much connected in being a vibrant club.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. Now, I just have a couple last minute questions before well, they're going to take 1 minute. Do you feel comfortable that we covered looking at our current and future service projects to ensure that they meet our needs?
Yes.
Yes, no, indifferent? And do you think we talked about some potential strategies for collecting and measuring data?
Yes.
Thank you. Who's saying yes?
That's Dwight.
Dwight, I love you. Any last minute comments, questions, or concerns? And you've got actually less than 1 minute, because my clock says 7:39, but it said 7:39 for a bit. This was great. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I came away with a lot of ideas, and I think that as long as we continue to engage our members, provide value for our members, and most certainly provide value for our, oh, we have 2 minutes, I'm sorry. For our beneficiaries, I think we're on the right track. And, you know, a gentleman by the name of Bill Gates Sr. passed away within the last month. And he was a speaker at the Rotary International Convention in Salt Lake City. I think the year was 2007, 6 or 7 or 8. And he got up and he primarily talked about the Gates Foundation role in polio, but he also talked about whatever follows polio eradication, Rotary needs to think big. And I've never forgotten that. Mostly because he was saying those words, and Bill Gates Sr. was a big man. I think he was like 6'6" or 6'7", very tall man, but a very, very imposing figure. But he's right. I think when we're talking about Rotary and developing programs and projects in our communities and in our world community, if we start to really focus on thinking big, we are going to experience success. We're going to experience member engagement, and we are providing value to our members. Look at the survey that John did before we came into our breakouts, and that was that people wanted to be engaged in local and global projects. So I think we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our members and our not yet members. So thank you all.